If you're tired of these promos, supporters get the podcast early and ad-free. Just go to donate.bogosity.tv for the links to sign up. Welcome to the Bogosity podcast for the week of August 16, 2020, the podcast that knows perfectly well Shinola is a shoe polish. This is your host, Shane Killian. Let's de-atomize the news of the bogus. We've seen gun control morons in Congress trying to ban 3D printers because they can be used to make guns, even if they don't work very well yet. We've pointed out over and over again that guns, including fully automatic assault rifles, can be made with basic machinist tools. We should have kept our mouths shut. Yes, Democrats in Congress are moving to ban milling machines because they can be used to make guns. H.R. 7468, the Stop Home Manufacturing of Ghost Guns Act of 2020, restricts devices capable of manufacturing firearms for private citizens without an FFL. That would include family businesses and people doing contract work from home, as well as hobbyists. Of course, it's supported by completely moronic organizations like Everytown. The Giffords PAC also opposed it, saying, "We must stop the proliferation of these easy-to-make, untraceable guns that can be obtained with no background check. Clamping down on the milling machines that make it virtually effortless to create an arsenal of untraceable weapons from a basement or garage is a good place to start." Did you hear that? A good place to start. Meaning they're not through yet. So what's next then? Laser cutters? Water jet cutters? CNC machines? Are they going to ban all of those? It still wouldn't stop people being able to make slamfire shotguns from $30 in parts from any hardware store. There's a legal concept called substantial lawful use. It means that if something can be used in a way that doesn't violate the law, you don't get to ban it just because some people are using it to violate the law. People might use cars to get away from bank robberies, but that does not mean the government gets to ban cars because cars have a substantial lawful use. People use them to go to work or drive to the store or whatever. Truth be told, substantial lawful use is another reason why guns can't legally be banned. There are 20 million AR-15s in the country, but more people are killed by hammers or even bare hands than from rifles of any kind. And we've covered how the CDC, which is absolutely hostile to gun ownership, found that people were several times more likely to use a gun to foil a crime than they were to commit one. Research that they promptly buried and was finally uncovered by a criminologist 20 years later. But most guns, when they're used at all, are used for sporting and recreation purposes, shooting at paper targets in environments where people aren't even put in danger. Their sporting use outweighs their use for defense, and their use for defense outweighs their use for aggression. Guns absolutely have substantial lawful use. But it becomes even a bigger joke with milling machines, which can be used to shape a piece of metal into whatever you want. That absolutely is substantial lawful use. And if they can ban the milling machine, they can ban anything. It's totalitarian fascism, and nothing would be immune after that. If you're looking for ways to support this channel, but you don't have any spare cash and you can't stand advertisements, you can do so by generating your own cryptocurrency. Use the links at the bottom of the description to listen to the podcast and all of my videos on bittube.tv or lbry.tv to get cryptocurrency for the creator and yourself. Or if you listen to the podcast at the podcast page, you'll also generate crypto. You can also go to airtime.bogosity.tv to get the airtime extension and generate crypto for yourself and the creators on the web anywhere you go, including my YouTube channel. Get 5 tubes free just for installing the extension and signing up, and then simply browse the web as normal. Easily monetize your favorite creators and yourself with cryptocurrency without advertising on bittube.tv or lbry.tv or with the airtime extension at airtime.bogosity.tv. It's been a while since there's been anything to cover in the Monsanto saga, but that doesn't mean the fear-mongering and pseudoscience isn't still around, especially in the really stupid states like California, where they have the Proposition 65 cancer warning for glyphosate when, in reality, it isn't any more likely to give you cancer than a cup of coffee. But here's some good news at least. A federal district court has ruled that the cancer warning mandate violates the First Amendment. Proposition 65 is also known as the Safe Drinking Water and Toxic Enforcement Act of 1986, and it mandates the listing of substances that cause cancer, based on the finding of totally legitimate science sources like IARC. That's sarcasm, by the way, as everyone who's followed my podcasts and videos knows. IARC has declared all sorts of crazy things to be cancerous, including red meat, welding fumes, wood dust, and even being a barber. They even said that sausage is as dangerous as plutonium. In fact, there's only one substance in existence they've ever classified to be non-carcinogenic, caprolactam, which is a chemical used to make nylon. That didn't stop the EPA from regulating it as a pollutant, of course. IARC manages to worm their way out of trouble by saying that they only measure hazard, not risk. But that doesn't stop them from using the word risk all over the place when they release reports to the media. For example, they list beer as a carcinogen, even though you'd have to drink 1,000 liters of beer a day in order for it to have a serious risk of causing cancer. You'd die of alcohol poisoning long before the cancer killed you. So given all that, you can see how ridiculous it is that Prop 65 prohibits businesses from knowingly exposing individuals to substances on the list without giving them a clear and reasonable warning. Penalties can be up to $2,500 per chemical per day. Not only that, but anyone, whether they've suffered any harm or not, can bring a private enforcement action forward and receive 25% of the penalty as well as attorney's fees and costs. It's known as the bounty hunter provision. And they wonder why so many of their businesses are moving to Nevada. And there's no consideration of dosage, even though, as we've said over and over again, the dose makes the poison. And California did a lot of cherry picking with this list. They added glyphosate to the list because it's listed by IARC, but they ignored the EPA, the WHO, the parent organization of IARC, numerous agencies from many countries, and even panels of medical experts, all saying there is little to no evidence that glyphosate causes cancer. The EPA even went so far as to say it would not approve herbicide labels with a Prop 65 warning since they are false, misleading, and misbranded. So, of course, there's a lawsuit, not only from Monsanto, but from wheat and corn farmers as well, on the grounds that California was forcing them to make, quote, false, misleading, and highly controversial statements. California said that the suit was unwarranted because enforcement is unlikely because of legal safe harbor provisions, but the courts were unimpressed given the bounty hunter feature of the law I mentioned earlier. The court ruled that the provision made litigation, quote, easy and almost absurdly easy at the pleading stage and pretrial stages. The court mentioned the findings of the Supreme Court that compelled speech was as much of a First Amendment violation as restrictions on speech. Although SCOTUS did carve out an exception for government disclosure requirements, they required those disclosures to be of, quote, purely factual and uncontroversial information, which just does not apply to Prop 65. The court determined that the warning for glyphosate is misleading because the statement that it's known to cause cancer is simply untrue. An untrue statement does not advance the interests the state has in informing consumers regarding potential cancer hazards, and therefore the warning cannot be justified as a valid restriction. Therefore, the court ruled it was contrary to the First Amendment. There has been no notice of appeal appearing on the district court's docket, and it's past the 30-day time limit for appeal, so this looks like it may be that. This may have an effect on another piece of litigation still ongoing, where Prop 65 is requiring a warning for acrylamide, which is a chemical resulting from the Maillard reaction. This is a reaction involving amino acids, starches, and sugars when exposed to heat, which is basically what results in browned food, the golden brown color of most bread, seared steaks, baked potatoes, French fries, cookies, toasted marshmallows, breakfast cereals, and so on. IARC lists acrylamide as a carcinogen because of course they do, and so California has it as part of its Prop 65 requirements. Again, this requires businesses to make false, misleading, and controversial statements about all of these foods. This is not about consumer safety. This is about pushing a watermelon agenda and about getting money for lawyers litigating these cases. None of it makes us any safer. Just the opposite, in fact. If you're on the Wi-Fi in a coffee shop or hotel, anyone on that network can get your traffic. Do you really trust all of those strangers? For that matter, do you really trust your ISP? A VPN can protect you from prying eyes, disguise your location, and even foil government censors. It's essential in this day and age, so go to vpn.bogosity.tv and you'll be taken to BoxPN. Starting at just $2.99 a month, you can get unlimited high-speed connections to VPN servers all over the world, and they don't log connections, so your privacy is assured. Traveling abroad, just VPN home, and don't worry about what those other governments are doing. Back at home, stop your ISP from traffic shaping and messing with the quality internet access you're paying good money for. You can connect from multiple machines at once, including your smartphone or tablet, and it supports all the secure standards, including OpenVPN and SSTP. Bypass censors and surveillance with your own secure VPN connection. Go to vpn.bogosity.tv. We've covered pretty much since the start of this podcast how difficult, if not impossible, it is to moderate content, especially if you want to do it with an algorithm. It gets even worse if the reason for the moderation is, but the kids! The Copia Institute just released a case study going back to 1996 about the problems Disney has had trying to make chat rooms for kids that allow them to be protected. Randy Farmer was part of the company Disney worked with to try and make their online community. He wrote years later, I found myself unable to reconcile the idea of a virtual world where kids would run around, play with objects, and chat with each other without someone saying or doing something that might upset another. Even in 1996, we knew the text filters are no good at solving this kind of problem. In fact, at the same time, one of Disney's own project managers said, we spent several weeks building a UI that used pop-downs to construct sentences, and only had completely harmless words, the standard parts of grammar and safe nouns like cars, animals, and objects in the world. We thought it was the perfect solution until we set our first 14-year-old boy down in front of it. Within minutes, he'd created the following sentence. I want to stick my long-necked giraffe up your fluffy white bunny. So they decided against doing a chat, but when they developed HercWorld, they ran into a problem. Describing the game activity, one of the designers said, kids can push around Roman columns and blocks to solve puzzles, make custom shapes, and buildings. Farmer was their consultant, and he replied, doesn't that violate the Disney standard? People will push the stones around until they spell hi or the F word or their phone number or whatever. You've just invented block chat, TM. If you can put down objects, you've got chat. We learned this in Habitat and Worlds Away, where people would turn 100 afro heads into a waterbed. And later the consultant recounted, we all laughed, but it was that kind of awkward laugh that you know means that we're all probably just wasting our time. HercWorld never happened. You know, it'd be a lot easier to make the internet safe for kids if the kids didn't keep messing it up. Also, I just want to say that I have no idea what the phrase, turn 100 afro heads into a waterbed means, but I love it just for the surreal imagery. The Institute points out that the designers have to make several decisions. Is there a way to build a chat that will not be abused by clever kids to reference forbidden content? The answer to that is almost certainly not. Can you build a chat that does not require universal moderation and pre-approval of everything that users will say? Well, you can, but that doesn't mean you should. Are there ways in which kids will still be able to communicate with others even without an actual chat feature? Almost certainly yes. People are very good at figuring out ways to communicate with each other. It's what we do. Everything from smoke signals to Morse code proves that human beings are very inventive when it comes to communicating with limited means. They continue. How much of a community do you have with no chat or extremely limited chat? I think it's really going to be one or the other. If you have a community, it's only as good as the members of that community. These were problems that Farmer and his team continued to face. Quote, "The Disney standard, now a legend amongst our employees, still held. No harassment, detectable or not, and no heavy moderation overhead. Brian Bowman had an idea, though. Fully pre-constructed sentences, dozens of them, easy to access. Specialize them for activities available in the world. Vaz Douglas, our project manager working with Zug, liked to call this feature Chatless Chat. So we built and launched it for them. Disney was still very tentative about the genre, so they only ran it for about 6 months. I doubt it was ever very popular." The next attempt was in a world called Toontown, about which Farmer wrote, "They added a method to allow direct chat between users that involves the exchange of secret codes that are generated for each user with parental permission. The idea is that kids would print them out and give them to each other on the playground, making the recipient not a stranger. Sure enough, chatters figured out a few simple protocols to pass their secret code." He gives some examples, and in fact there was an entire wiki page on the Disney Online World's domain that described how you could exchange your secret with someone else in the game. Farmer calls this the speed chat corollary. By hook or by crook, customers will always find a way to connect with each other. In his famous paper on information theory, Claude Shannon differentiated between a message and the meaning. The meaning is encoded into the message using whatever medium is available. No amount of control over the message will give you control over the meaning. At any rate, there is one very effective, although certainly not perfect, means of keeping your child safe online, and it's actually been a method used for thousands of years. It's called parenting! We live in a world where light bulbs connect to the internet, and recent attacks on them prove that your online security is under threat like never before. Not only your websites, but the internet-enabled devices you buy. And the biggest problem is weak passwords. That's why you need LastPass. LastPass allows you to randomly generate strong, unique passwords on the web and on your internet-enabled devices, all protected by one master password. LastPass sets up in minutes and gives you secure automatic logins throughout the web, synchronizing across all your browsers, all your computers, and even your mobile devices, at home, at work, or on the road. It even securely stores sensitive form data, including credit card numbers, backup sensitive documents, software licenses, Wi-Fi logins, and more. And with LastPass Premium, you can get these benefits on other applications, manage passwords for your entire family, and also get priority customer support. Sign up at password.bogosity.tv for a free month of LastPass Premium. Log in securely everywhere using the last password you'll ever have to remember. Go to password.bogosity.tv and get LastPass now. And now it's time to adjudicate this week's biggest Bogon emitter. There are lies that make you shake your head, and there are bigger lies that make you outraged. And then there are the incredibly brazen, bald-faced, outright lies that go way beyond outrage and make you just sit in awe, in complete, stunned admiration of the raw, untethered chutzpah required to tell them. The latter is the kind of whopper Common Dreams just told about Trump in their story entitled, "Trump just admitted on live television he will terminate Social Security and Medicare if re-elected in November." No, he absolutely did not. If you actually read the story, or more importantly, if you get it from a more credible source, you'll see that what he did do was call for temporarily deferring the Social Security and Medicare taxes beginning on September 1st for those making less than $100,000 per year, those being the most regressive taxes after the inflation tax, the ones that hit the poor hardest. Yes, that does bring up the question of how they'll be funded, but considering they're both already running unsustainable deficits there seems to be no way of fixing, one wonders how much it really matters at this point. But don't celebrate too early, you will still owe those taxes. It'll just be when you do your taxes instead of right now. They reference, quote, "the president's promise to make the payroll tax permanent, a move that would inherently bankrupt the Social Security system." The word permanent comes in because he talked about making the deferment permanent, meaning they won't come directly out of your paycheck throughout the year. You'll get the money that you earned right away in exchange for a lower tax refund the next year. In fact, if anything, it should cause families to come out ahead financially because it's not like the government pays you interest on the money they've withheld throughout the year. They quote the advocacy group Social Security Works, and the name alone just screams of incredifail, saying, "We just heard it straight from Trump's own mouth. If reelected, he will destroy Social Security." Yeah, because waiting a few months to get tax money will be so destructive. But that was nothing compared to the whopper they actually tweeted, quote, "President Trump just promised to permanently defund Social Security and Medicare." Oh, if only he did. That'd actually be a reason to vote for him. Nancy Altman, president of Social Security Works, I'm sorry, I still have trouble saying that name, said, quote, "Social Security is the foundation of everyone's retirement security." Yeah, and don't you think that's a problem? It was supposed to be a safety net. It was supposed to be something that was there just in case people's retirement plans didn't work out. And now it's the foundation of our retirement. And let me remind you, it's a foundation in the form of a regressive tax that ends up moving wealth from the poor, especially blacks, into the upper classes. They continue with the tweets completely lying about what happened, but they don't seem to want to mention that he authorized HUD and HHS to offer eviction protections to renters and homeowners and extended the term of relief to student loan borrowers from September 30th to the end of the year. Also included in his plan is reduced enhanced unemployment. Reduced enhanced? Is it new and improved too? Is it a genuine imitation diamond? Okay, so Trump and his supporters aren't much better, but at least they weren't telling enormous falsehoods that anyone doing a modicum of research could debunk. That makes all of these leftist groups, but especially Common Dreams, this week's biggest Bogon emitter. I want to tell you about the eyeglasses I've been wearing for years. As people can see on my videos, I have a very strong prescription, which makes glasses more expensive, especially when I need computer glasses, reading glasses, prescription sunglasses, and most expensively, progressive lenses for general everyday wear. To save money while still getting quality glasses, I get them from Firmoo. In fact, I just got a pair of progressives with high-index aspherical lenses and a nice pair of frames my wife loves for just over $100. It would have been $500 to get them through my eye doctor. Not only do they look good, the glasses are durable. I've worn many pairs for several years without problems. All orders come with a 30-day return policy, a 3-month warranty, and one-on-one customer service. Go to Firmoo, that's FIRMOO.Bogosity.tv anytime you need quality glasses at a low price. Once again, that's Firmoo.Bogosity.tv. And now let's over-identify this week's Idiot Extraordinaire. And this week it goes to the California Teachers Association for stifling charter schools and gaining fundings for students who no longer go there. It's all about the new state education budget that they helped to craft, and anyone who tried this crap in the private sector would be prosecuted by the SEC too quick to talk about. Yes, they're spending completely imaginary money in the form of $12 billion to school districts based on federal money that hasn't even been approved yet. Even if it does happen, it'll be in the form of deferrals, which are basically IOUs using money that doesn't exist. Another problem is that they're tying funding to the previous year's attendance. They're getting this year the money for students that attended last year, which means that since enrollment in the state's public schools fell by more than 63,000 students in the last 2 years, they're getting paid for students who are no longer there. Also, charter school enrollment grew by more than 46,500 over the same time period, meaning that charters with their greater student numbers will be getting less money per pupil. It's also adversely affecting the public school districts with increased enrollment, which is generally happening because they're doing a better job teaching and more parents want to send their kids there. Non-budgetary items sewn into the bill include a moratorium on layoffs, a significant reduction in the school day, some offering less than 3 hours of live instruction each week, and less accountability by not providing information on academics, college readiness, absenteeism, graduation, and suspension rates for 2020. The Department of Education will not be allowed to identify any districts that fall short of its educational attainment goals. All this, and the union is still crying for more money. They already have Proposition 15 on the November ballot, which would increase commercial property tax to pay teachers even more for working less. There's also a new law that gives school boards the power to reject new charter schools and renewals of existing charters. You know, the competition. I'm sure Walmart would love to be able to reject new targets that want to come into the area. The law allows school boards to deny a new charter school's petition if the school is, quote, unlikely to serve the interests of the entire community. The law doesn't specify what that means, it leaves it that vague. In fact, Richard Vladovic, president of the LA Unified School Board, came right out and said, quote, language is very subjective nowadays. I am not making that up. California Teachers Association board member Erica Jones said, quote, we can't sit here and deny that LA Unified is oversaturated with charter growth. For the love of Mike Jones, you want some cheese to go with that wine? And given the huge waiting lists to get into charters, in what way are you oversaturated? One big problem is that, in addition to restricting the construction of new charter schools, it also applies to charters wanting to change locations. This happens all the time because charter schools typically start out in temporary facilities, moving to permanent sites a few years later. And they can have the site all ready to move into, only to be denied at the last minute by the school board, meaning that they have to pay to keep up 2 pieces of property. The union also claimed that this would just help spread the coronavirus because more schools means it's more difficult to follow protocols such as physical distancing. Give me a break! I mean, if anything, you'd think it'd be just the opposite, right? Students divided across more schools means fewer students per school. It's pretty simple math, but then they probably don't understand that considering they're public school teachers. California closes down charter schools with low performance. Ask me if they do the same with government schools. And when a low-performing charter is closed down, the students are generally sent to an even lower-performing government school. Generally, these are in poor and minority communities where students need more of a leg up than just the previous year they spent in the charter. I mean, is it really realistic to expect them to undo the damage of years of government schooling in a single year? People talk about the problems of systemic racism in this country, but really, that's just a symptom. The real problem is systemic discrimination against anything the political class doesn't like, whether it's inner-city blacks, charter schools, or whatever. And they certainly don't like anything that threatens their monopoly on power, money, and indoctrination of the young. Which makes me wish I could do a whole lot worse to the California Teachers Union than simply naming them this week's Idiot Extraordinaire! Well, that wraps up this I'll Be Late for Target Practice, There's an Opera Letting Out edition of the Bogosity podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please keep this podcast going by subscribing and supporting in one of several different ways you can find at donate.bogosity.tv, including PayPal, cryptocurrency, or subscribing at Patreon or Subscribestar to listen early and ad-free. Also, please come to discord.bogosity.tv where you can join the discussion and post a question, statement, news article, or rant. Thank you for listening. Until next time, here's a quote from Karl Hess. I loved education, which is why I spent as little time as possible in school. The Bogosity podcast is licensed under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License. Bogosity. Do you have children, or nieces or nephews? Are you homeschooling, or just want to counter some of the socialist indoctrination most children get in school? If so, go to bogosity.tv/TuttleTwins, and you'll be taken to a website where you can get some great books for elementary-aged children. The Tuttle Twins books are books about liberty and free market economics that include children's versions of Bastiat's The Law, Leonard Read's I, Pencil, and Hayek's The Road to Serfdom, as well as books about the Federal Reserve and how regulations protect business cronies. They'll learn about the harm caused by eminent domain, or regulations passed in the name of safety, and fundamental concepts of liberty. And as you can see from the sample pages on the website, they're all easy to read and nicely illustrated. They're just $9.99 a piece, or get a special discount as well as free bonuses when you purchase all 5. You can even buy in bulk to donate to schools and local libraries. So get the Tuttle Twins books at bogosity.tv/TuttleTwins.